Welcome to RPG Reanimators, a podcast for GMs where we dissect horror scenarios and offer our experiences and advice to reanimate them at the table. I'm Lex,
I'm Holly.
And I'm Alex.
with a special guest with us this evening, Al Smith.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm here with the Reanimators.
Great to have you, Al. How's it going?
Wonderful to be here.
Could you tell us a little about yourself for context?
Yeah, sure. So I've been running and playing Call of Cthulhu for a very, very long time. People ask me, what are the stuff that you run? Like everything. I run everything. I'm in the middle of my third Masks run right now. Um, I'm an attorney and I live in Des Moines, Iowa. And yeah, I write RPG stuff on the side.
Very nice.
Oh, what have you written?
I've written a good amount of stuff. I've done some freelance stuff that has not been released by the companies yet, so I can't talk too much about that.
Very cool.
In terms of self-published stuff, I've written for The Between, I've written for Vason, I've written for Mothership, and but most of my stuff has been for Call of Cthulhu on the Miskatonic Repository.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And now in the meantime, let's see what's on the slab. The case report for this session is Field of Screams, a scenario written by, you may have guessed it, Al Smith for Pulp Cthulhu. In this scenario, a ragtag baseball team's game is at risk of being canceled because of ghosts haunting the field. As with any dissection, we'll be discussing all the gross innards of the scenario, so from this point on, there will be spoilers. So if you're interested in playing this scenario, please stop here and share this episode with your GM so that they can listen and consider running this for your group. We'll also include links for where you can purchase a copy of this scenario for yourself in the show notes of this episode. Now with that out of the way, let's begin our dissection. Alright, so what's the general setup that the GM would need to have in mind when getting ready to run this?
Yeah, what's actually happening, Al?
So what is happening is basically that the Kunyan, who have anti-material technology so that they can phase in and out of existence basically and appear ghost-like, have an entrance down to Kunyan, which is underground. This entrance just so happens to be above a cornfield in Iowa, where people are going to have a baseball game. And so it looks a lot like there are ghosts haunting this baseball field, much like I don't know, some movie that whose name I can't recall right at the moment.
I don't know, maybe it'll come to us later. Shortly after this session, we learned that James Earl Jones, a star actor in Field of Dreams, as well as numerous other films and productions, passed away the same day we recorded this episode. So we wanted to add a brief tribute to him here. Rest in peace, James. Your life and work has brought joy and inspiration to countless people and will continue to do so in perpetuity. You will be cherished and missed.
And who exactly are the Kunyan? They're like H.P. Lovecraft's invention.
So I'm gonna caution everyone here. If you read The Mound, it is one of Lovecraft's more classically racist stories. Yes, it is.
Ooh,
The guy's like an ethnologist, and he's doing like race science. And,
Jesus.
like,
What is he measuring people's skulls? That's
yeah, no,
awful.
like I'm kind of surprised he didn't pull out the calipers, and so it's a very weird, like, it has these weird anthropological views of what the Kunyan are, which is, as he kind of puts it, it's originally set in Oklahoma, so as he kind of puts it, it's like they're like natives or indigenous people to the land, but actually they just look a little bit different. They're actually the Kunyan. So there's a couple of things that are changed for the scenario. One of which is I just made them look like a multi-ethnic society, right?
Yeah.
That looks slightly off, like Star Wars off. Um, and instead of this weird, they have this weird thing about how this society has come into, I don't know, what to say, some sort of ennui where they're not productive and they're lazy and everything. And I thought it was a bit more interesting to make them a bit
Oh my
more.
God, that's so problematic.
So the Kunyan just developed social media, basically.
Well, it's kind of weird. It's different because they got technology. They had so much technology that they got lazy, right? It's so they're like super
Oh, like
advanced.
Wall-E people?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, They're just like, well, we never die, and we have all this stuff, and so
Bored of their own immortality. Yeah.
yeah, it's a little bit more interesting if they're just like, we really hate humans and want them to not be around us. So that's the Kunyan of this scenario.
Yeah, I really appreciated that deviation that you took with it because and this is also the first time I'm hearing the name said out loud because I've always said Kenyani, but
Yeah, I say Kunyan.
it's an eldritch term far befuddling to mere mortal minds. But they've always been one of those kind of like the Chocho that I've just been, "Ugh, not going to touch that." And I appreciated taking something that is mythos related, but it just feels solid in this. It doesn't feel very racist adjacent
Yeah.
for like all of Howard's writings.
Yeah, that was important to me. And I was just like, well, they're just like a race of underground people. There's no reason it needs to be that bad.
Yeah, you don't need to bring it all the way there.
The Chocho, I'm not sure how to say it. I'll write that down.
And so the player characters themselves are baseball players for the All Nations team, just kind of touring around the country that are brought in to make a big show of all of this for their manager, Fast Eddie Barnes, that presumably just got this arrangement because it was cheap and easy to do. And then once they're there, the characters, or I guess in this case, the pulp heroes, need to go into the town and investigate and find all kinds of local lore and clues about these unsavory goings on within the town itself. The town is pretty fleshed out, and reading through it with all of the locations that you had some key NPCs that they would want to talk to, and pretty efficiently going through their motivations, what they would want to talk about, what they would know. What was your real motivation and inspiration for some of the stories that the players can come across to kind of fuel their intrigue into the scenario?
Well, like all great writers, I mostly steal, I mostly stole all that from the Mound. They are stories that the narrator of the story hears, and so it sparks his interest into the Mound and wanting to investigate more. And so I pretty much stole those right from the story.
Hmm.
I did appreciate the little historical blurbs. I know nothing about baseball. So yeah, I appreciated the historical blurbs, learning a little bit about like All Nations team. Was that like that's a historically accurate thing? Is that correct? That was neat.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, baseball at the time was really interesting historically, but I wanted also people to enjoy the scenario, even if they weren't as big of baseball fans as I am. And so that was a cool historical thing that happened. And then in addition to that, we also have what are called the Negro Leagues. That's their official name. I don't really like saying that title, but that's what they're called. Um, and so that is makes up a lot of the history of baseball back in the 1920s, especially those barnstorming teams that go from city to city and will play games in these small towns.
Hmm. And whenever they are investigating around in the city, Alex, could you tell me what are some of the main clues that they can find there before they come back and discover something is wrong with the mound on the baseball field?
Of course. So first they'll be trying to get a lot of the civilians in this town to come to the baseball game, but they'll sense that something is wrong. No one wants to go to the town because some people have gone missing. I know one person committed suicide because they saw something on the field. But the main clue I would say is Clarence Hickman. He's got his arm missing, and he's claimed to come back from the fields, escaping from the ghosts. And he's missing his brother, Otis. And once the investigators talk to him, he pretty much gives them the lowdown saying, oh, there's something fucked up going on underneath the baseball field, and you got to save my brother.
And then sometime after this, presumably there would be some kind of dramatic snap. And then that's whenever something has happened on the field. Maybe there's screams, dynamite, gunshots, something like that. And typically it would be Edith Barnes is one of the few sympathetic NPCs that would be associated with the team that's carting them around, has been taken, is missing. And there is
That's
a
right.
hole lined up in the middle of the field. How do you normally try to pull that off at the game? Do you wait until the game is about to start and this happens? Is it just while they're away, there is this snap?
I wait for a good like pacing moment, like pretty much after they get this clue that there is something under the field, like it's another push to get in there. once Edith is taken. Because I really like how on the player character sheets, Edith is like an important, significant person. So they have a, I guess, mechanical reason as well as just like an emotional one to advance the plot. But what about you, Al?
Yeah, I kind of use it as a tool, right? So technically, they don't have to wait until it happens. They could go down there just as they wanted, but um, typically players go off, and then it happens whenever I want it to happen. For so a con scenario, it happens at that and the 2 hour mark. If it's a at home scenario, it happens whenever we want to have it happen. If I just trying to move things along, then all of a sudden someone shows up and says, "Oh my gosh, this happened." But if they go back there, it's already happened.
Mm. And then this hole that's opened up in the middle of the baseball field guides them down into some of the further locations in the scenario itself outside of Rutland. Holly, do you want to tell us about where they're headed, where they're going?
Sure. So this hole in the mound leads them through a winding, seems like a cave system, and out into the world the Kenyanians inhabit. And from there, they can find temples of worship and awful sacrifice where they can observe some pretty horrific things. There's also the arena, the Colosseum, where Edith has been held captive. And I think that's pretty much it. But very interesting write-ups on both of those locations within the Kenyanian world.
And a question that I have for kind of everyone present is something that I really liked about this scenario is that it's one of the few that I've seen that has stated chase rules. That you have the little handout for it, because Call of Cthulhu chases is like, they're great when they work, but they take just enough extra labor that I don't want to actually do it myself. So having it done means I'll actually pull it off for this scenario. Do you think that you would kind of go through the chase in reverse as you are describing their journey down this pathway to maybe kind of tease things that they may need to come across later on?
I like the idea of doing that, especially there's one part where there's kind of this like crack in the chase where investigators like barely fit through. So definitely foreshadowing that early on in their journey down would be, yeah, I think that particularly would be a good idea to do. But yeah, Alec, huge props for the chase write-up because chase scenes scare me. Like from a keeper perspective. So I always appreciate a good thorough write-up with a diagram.
Yeah, sure. It's one of the great things about the scenario, and one of the great flaws of the scenario is that's chase rules.
I know Paul Fricker does a good write-up explanation on the Good Friends YouTube channel for chase rules that was pretty useful in learning.
Yeah, one of the reasons I wanted to write it and put it in a scenario is that so much of RPGs are taught by oral tradition, right? Where someone learned how to run an RPG from watching someone else learn how to run an RPG, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was always a guy that learned by reading the book. I didn't have anybody helping me out when I was first learning how to do RPGs. And so I was like, well, I'm going to put it as part of a scenario, and then that's how people can learn how to do it. And then the hardest part is exactly what you said, Lex, is that you have to prepare for it. You have to prepare for it just a little bit. And then you'll feel confident as you're running it, and then you can do it whenever you want. When in any campaign you're running, if you think this is going to be good for it, you can really do it whenever you want. And so that was kind of my goal in putting it in there.
Okay, but I am going to latch on to something that you said a bit earlier, is one of the great flaws of the scenario, too. What makes you say that?
Oh, people say, "Oh, I don't like the chase rules," right? So I think it's a great idea, but some people don't like it. So, they're free to like whatever they like. But yeah, some people don't enjoy it.
Oh, that sounds like a them problem then. I was curious if you've had any just catastrophes where if you have me playing and I bungle every roll and it's like, well, you die. That's it. Thanks, everybody.
That is the more deadly part of the scenario, but that's called Cthulhu. Sometimes you don't make it. You don't spend luck in the right places. You don't make the right rolls.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to touch on something you just said though, Al, the whole like oral tradition and kind of learning from what people have told you and passed down to you. I think that the chase rules do have a reputation among keepers as being like difficult and complicated. And I remember leading up to the first time I ever did a chase scene or read the chase rules, like that's all I'd ever heard was it's too complicated to even attempt. So I think that, partly maybe it's people are just scared off of it before they even get a chance to try it because it just has a reputation as being overly complicated. So
Yeah, and I know Seth Skorkowski, I think he just has a dedicated video for chase rules because he said that while they may seem scary, that they have led to some of the most satisfying
right.
kind of his players talking about how it felt just like a horror movie and being able to pull it off. So yeah, I appreciate trying to facilitate that for GMs.
Yeah, and I think Seth's right. And you know what? No matter what you're doing, you're engaging in game design as GM, right? Either you're listening to somebody else do it or you're engaging in your own independent one. And I decided a long time ago I'm not a better game designer than Paul Fricker. I'm just gonna go with what he has. My idea for chase rules are bad. It's like roll for dex. Okay, you lost, you die. Right? That's not good. That's not a good game. And so I really wanted to give people the confidence to say, yes, I can do these. They are not that hard. I'm a smart, capable adult person, and I can run chase rules.
I love chase rules. I know, like freak opinion.
Yeah, no. Alex is
Real
one of
hot
the
take.
one for me.
I have it on good account that Alex is a bit of a freak.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I cut you off, Al. Continue.
No, Alex is one of the few keepers has run one for me. So yeah, and he knows. He knows.
Oh yeah, I think my first scenario that I ever wrote had a chase.
Yeah, it was real good.
And so we've skipped a little bit to the end here, but if we want to comment on, do you want to talk about the key NPCs in the scenario or just jump straight into what they're going to be running from in this chase we've been referring to so much
Yeah,
about?
I'll strike them out real quick.
Go for it.
So we got Edith Barnes, the manager, super supportive to the team. Meant to be a likable person that you obviously want to go and rescue during the game. You got Fast Eddie Barnes, who is the baseball team owner. A little bit of comic relief. Like one section, he brings a box of dynamite to the field because like, oh, these are great fireworks that we're gonna use to lure people in and get lots of ticket sales and
It was apparently played by Nixon.
or something like that. In Al's game, he said something really funny because I asked like, why do all our baseball players have 45 automatics? He gave some like, I was like, last trick. We have Clarence Hickman, the brother missing an arm who escaped from the Kunyan city. We have Otis Hickman, the person who has not escaped from the Kunyan city. And then we have Andrew Lewis, the mayor of Rutland, who is meant to be like an antagonist should the GM need an antagonist that is very like forward-facing. Personal note, I didn't really use him as an antagonist, and there's a great write-up giving the GM like pretty much permission, saying, hey, it's okay if you don't use him as an antagonist, and it's okay if you do.
That's something that I did appreciate within the scenario itself, that you note that if your players want a more human antagonist, you can paint him up a bit more. And yet, Alex, looking a little bit ahead at your notes, that you like these more monstrous antagonists for pulp games. Have you found that there's a good, reliable way to try to read the table in terms of what your players are gunning for? What would be more satisfying to them?
Usually when I run a game, I look for what I like to run, and if I like to run it, I'm more passionate about it, and if I'm more passionate about it, players have a good time. So the comment about liking more monstrous enemies for a pulp game makes it so much simpler. I was talking to Matthew Sanderson, and he's saying like one of the reasons why, certain pulp campaigns are less favorable than some of the others is because they don't have a monstrous like front-facing antagonist. They just look like normal humans. You're playing a pulp game, right? You want to fight monsters. So that really resonated with me.
Interesting thought.
Yeah. As for threats, you've got the Kunyans themselves with their swords and anti-material rifle things. You have the monsters, the Gyayothans, which are like the unicorn freak beast bison things. You've got like zombies who are like Yumbies. They're called Yumbies, where they've had like parts grafted onto them. And then you've got the super deadly chase sequence where if you fail a crowd of Kunyanians, they just like rip you apart because there's like hundreds of them.
They can fuck you up.
Okay. Boo.
I think we've kind of covered the key events. Do we want to jump right into what we think the beating heart of the scenario is? Whether it's on the left or the right side of the body?
I think the beating heart of the scenario is just like you're having a good time. It's like goofy pulp fun. You're playing as a baseball team with 45 automatics. Like I don't know what else to say. People are given dynamite. So yeah, it's just like a goofy pulp actiony scenario with a fun chase scene at the end.
I think that it's also a really good introduction scenario, especially I feel like I could give this to any new keeper and they would have no problem being able to run it. Kind of, you've set it up with these main plot beats. And it feels like a kind of ridiculous 80s Saturday morning movie or something that I might have on. That, like, why do the baseball players have guns? Why are you asking? This is cool. Go with it. And so, yeah, like keeping that very, like, we're not going to ask questions here. It's fun. We're rolling with it. We're going to get some body horror. Okay, now run. And yeah, that lightheartedness, I think, really comes through in this. What about you, Al? What do you think is the beating heart of this scenario?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Players will like, they'll grab the dynamite at the beginning and they'll be like, "Oh man, we're being so crazy, right? We're doing such unexpected stuff." You just sit there as the straight man and be like, "Oh yeah, you players,
You guys.
you're having. I didn't want any of this." While they're having, while they're having the time of their lives blowing up this small Iowa town, all right? And that's always what I wanted. We all talk about that perfect, so dark Call of Cthulhu game. Everyone's so serious, and it's so, it's so Lovecraftian, as people love to say. And I was just like, well, a lot of Call of Cthulhu is not played like that, or it's unachievable. So, or it can't be achieved every time. So why don't you just have fun with this one? I have had fun with this one. And then later, when you're all in the mood for it, you can play that really dark one. But Call of Cthulhu is a flexible game. It can handle fun, and ridiculousness as well as it can handle horror.
Just play Cult, right? Just play Bluebeard's Bride if you want to be horribly depressed.
I also feel like the Pulp Cthulhu tag on this kind of gives everybody that license and permission that, like, okay, I'm not even expecting this to be that classic, so dark Call of Cthulhu that, it starts off with that investigator tilt, but then it goes off the rails in a very, like, everyone should be on board with it kind of way.
Yeah, that was my hope. Is I'd tell everyone, hey, look, I know there's not a lot of stuff that says Pulp Cthulhu, but this is why Pulp Cthulhu is fun and enjoyable and has lots of cool rules that you guys can have fun with. I run all my campaigns in Pulp basically because I ran a lot of stuff as a teenager that resulted in my friends spending entire Saturdays re-rolling characters that were constantly dying, and I don't want to go through that. I'm too old. I'll eventually die. I don't have that sort of time. And so I really wanted people to know that the pulp rules were really great rules and they should try them out. And here's a great way to try them out in just a one shot.
Mm-hmm. Holly, did you have any extra thoughts for Beating Hearts?
I concur with everything that everyone's already said. It's just a fun, lighthearted kind of game. I agree. Just
Romp through subterranean body horror.
love it. Love that for us.
Okay, then, well, fine. I'm going to volunteer you for the next part then. What would you say are some of the general strengths of the scenario as written?
I am a person who is constantly working to get new people into the system and into RPGs in general. Like I even did a whole class at my job on like how to play RPGs. And so I think this is an excellent game for both sides of the table for newbies, like for new people to get them into Cthulhu or Pulp Cthulhu and for keepers because I think it's well written in a way that's just easily understandable, easily accessible. There's good asides that kind of say like, give you permission. This can be a bad guy or it doesn't have to be a bad guy. And like the little notes and hints and a little bit of history too to give you some backstory to what you're running.
And just to like reinforce that point, like even though experienced GMs like they don't need that explicit permission saying, "Oh, you can use this guy as a bad guy or not." It's super helpful for newer GMs who like really don't know how to do that. Maybe they just are running scenarios as written. Like they haven't even had that option of like, "Oh, I can change this stuff to what I see fit."
Yeah, kind of cracking open that shell a bit.
Yeah, that's such a great part.
I think something I really like about the scenario, I'll note, once again, I appreciate the way that you connected this to lore stuff without making it racist and shitty. Like, this is whenever I am considering running other scenarios for Delta Green that involve the Kenyani that I cannot mention for spoiler reasons, like, this is what I opened up for more of a source book. And like, how can I spin this a different way that isn't like, oh, they're just Native Americans, but not because, yeah.
That's awful.
Yeah, I guess I thought, when we're talking about the Kunyan, there's tons of tunnels down there, right? It's supposed to be really big.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing we know from Lovecraft's stories is the story he did with Azalea Bishop, the Mound, and it's just was one location in Oklahoma. So who knows what the rest of them are all like? And after that, there's plenty of narratives about going down into the center of the earth or going down below the Earth's crust and encountering people there that don't like humans, and that's just really what they are. And in general, is there these aliens that don't like humans, they're afraid of humans, and they're complex like any other culture. And there's good Kunyan that don't want to see people tortured, and there's warlike Kunyan, and those are the ones that are kind of in charge of this particular city. But yeah, I mean, like, I think that was the part that resonated with people, that under the earth we have enemies, right? It wasn't, calipers.
I also really like the PCs. It's like a very diverse group of people, and in a way that totally makes sense and fits the brief of like this all nations team, like historically accurate diversity. I love that. But yeah, like that people are from all over the place, all genders, all everything. It's just great. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty much all based on real baseball players, right? Not all at the same time, but I tried hard to, that Japan has a big history of baseball, so I wanted a Japanese player, and those players were out there. I didn't fit in a Korean player, even though Korea also really loves baseball. But I got a Cuban player that loved baseball in Cuba. The players were active all around in those days. And then the women were also accurate. There were women way back then playing Major League Baseball with men.
It's awesome.
So yeah, so that's all historically accurate. If anyone challenges you on that, other stuff maybe not. But yeah, all that stuff happened.
Very cool.
But even then, for the stuff that's maybe not, I do just appreciate that the scenario has many intentional anachronisms to make for a fun Call of Cthulhu scenario. Kind of, once again, keeping that purchase that, like, look, guys, we're here to have fun. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe this particular lineup never occurred. But
well, actually, yeah.
Who cares? Who gives a shit?
Well, they occurred in this game.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. This game takes place in an alternate universe where it did happen. So
an alternate.
You're fighting
universe where the
underground
GM is
people.
right.
This is not the hill to die on.
Because it's going to fall out from under you.
Stupid.
All right. I've got Al locked in. He can't leave the call right now. What are some potential limitations of the scenario as written?
So it's really straightforward, but like it's a benefit and a limitation, right?
I think something Holly and I were discussing a little bit before the call is I think we're just traumatized by players asking, what are we doing here? What's my motivation to keep going? And for that initial beat of you're here, they're talking about the field or ghosts or something, and now you're going into the town to investigate a bit. I sometimes worry about players maybe stalling out some there. We were bouncing some ideas around, and kind of like the idea that Fast Eddie promised them $5 to participate in the game, but they have to go out and actually sell their own tickets for it. So they each get 10 tickets and have to sell them to the townsfolk to actually come in and participate. They have people by the road, so you got the last straw.
Oh, that'd be pretty good. I mean, I think a solution I was thinking of while you were saying that was like, your boss told you to do it. Okay.
That's a really good idea, Lex. I'm mad that you didn't tell me about it before I wrote this whole thing.
But you can actually update it now because you didn't sound like a non-compete or whatever.
Ooh.
I theoretically could, but we all know I'm not going to.
But I'm very tired.
Now the listeners just have to do it themselves.
Yeah, listeners, you get out there, you fix up the scenario for me. I'm done.
Or worse, Al fixes it and he's like, "Are you happy now, Lex?" That's the final cut in there. Some bitch. All right. Before we get into reanimating the scenario, as always, we like to contextualize our general experiences with Field of Screams. I have not ran this. I had it ready to go, but never came around to it. I think someone here may have a lot of experience with the scenario. Could be wrong.
I run it a good amount of times, so yeah.
How many times?
Maybe not as many as you think, but yeah, it's kind of one of those ones I got in my back pocket at any time.
Oh, that's good. I had the pleasure of Al running it for me, and then I in turn ran it for the RPG Reanimators channel.
I have merely read it, but I did enjoy the read.
And we locked Nathan in the back closet as he reads it right now. So we'll see if he makes it in time. Well, now with all that out of the way, let's get into reanimation. So, overall, how do you want to highlight the beating heart of this scenario?
Well, it's a baseball scenario. Make it more baseball themed. Like, have baseball themed weapons. Make it a little silly. Make it a little goofy. What's a pulp game?
Imagine you're a keeper who thinks that baseball is the one with a hole in one. How would you baseball it up for a GM who may not have the most kind of sports know-how? Do you have any kind of tips or things that would be very fun for players that may be more in the know?
I know nothing about baseball, but I already came up like with a ton of stuff where it's like, oh, just like have baseball themed weapons, like make a dynamite strapped to baseballs, spiked bats, lethal baseball launchers, baseball miniguns. Who knows? It's a pulp game.
Very true. I like even having the idea of just more weird science shit out there in the Kenyanian city for players to pick up and play with and mess with and join the fight. I don't know. I like the weird science aspect of pulp. So.
Yeah, that's something like the mention of baseball miniguns is every ounce of my body wants to say yes. But I think maybe before running it, I may want to give one of the pre-gens a weird science skill to invest a bit in, that maybe when they find that Kenyani storehouse or something, that's their opportunity to Goonies up something that they can start shooting at people as they're on their way out.
Just MacGyver.
Yeah.
Maybe a good one. What else? Yeah, I think that's it. Just like keep it lighthearted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was always cautious with more baseball stuff because I would get feedback both ways, and I was trying to thread a line of people that are like, oh, I don't know about baseball, I don't even want to play the game, right? And I'll be like, no, it's fine. You'll have fun. Then some people were like, you should have added more like baseball rules, which I was never going to do.
Roll your baseball skill. All right, you won. Yep.
Yeah.
Like there's no game to be
or something.
played.
You
Like,
scored the third inning and then home base. You got it. Don't worry about it.
They challenged the Kenyanians to a game of baseball in order to win their way, and
That's
to
actually
win.
kinda
That
hype.
would be really cool. That's the final Coliseum thing. Is maybe they want to like have a show of strength in games before the invasion. You challenge them to baseball.
I think the Kunyan would probably do that. We just need the right group of players.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's all player like table dependent. So that is a cool idea though. Like they actually have to play baseball for their lives.
Yeah, well, like the Kenyanians think they're so superior. They're like, of course we will win this, and then you'd like let the players, play for their freedom. I love it.
It sounds like we may be progressing a little bit more into the plot points we may want to change or improve on that note. Alex, are there any changes that you've made for like the city or the Kenyani in general?
Yeah, I've got 2 points. So I when I ran this for the channel, I fucked up real bad. So originally when you go to Clarence, right, he's missing an arm, because his other arm is grafted to Otis. So I just rolled with it because originally, during the run I did for the channel, the players went there. I'm like, huh, okay. So Clarence is the one with the extra arm. So, so initially he had the extra arm, and I'm like, okay, shit, how do I make Otis worse? So Clarence has got the extra arm. He's at the window. He's got his hands against the window, and he's waving by with his third arm at the investigators. And I'm like, how do I make this more shocking because that's obviously a shock like factor that you can add in to surprise your players. Like, oh, that's where the arm went. So when they finally met Otis, he had like 10 arms grafted to him because I wanted to
Oh, okay.
escalate it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I really went in on the arm motif. So instead of like fields of strange plants, it's just field of arms. I'm like, okay,
I
this
dig
is
that
fine.
though.
This motherfucker had like 30 goddamn arms.
Yeah. This was me salvaging the situation, and it still worked, and it made it weird.
I
I'm
think
just
it'll make it
imagining
better.
he has to talk, or he has an arm growing out of his mouth, and it's just a hello. Hand puppet to
So yeah, that's to say, even if you make mistakes, if you think on your feet, you can make it work.
I like it. It adds a scare up in the town section. I thought it was cool.
Thank you. Um, and for my second point, I made the so back to my conversation about like having the monstrous antagonist for pulp games. I wanted to just simplify it, make it very more direct, where it's like, oh, let's just make the Kunyan weirder and non-human instead of just them being like a caricature. So I like made them have long tentacle arms with like talons on the ends of their hands, and that just reinforces the fact that they're very alien creatures. So it simplifies things in that regard.
I feel like my only actual suggestion in reading through it is misplaced by this point because I'm so used to running these more slow burn investigation things and I'm like, wait, this is pulp. Fuck. But that was my main thought in reading it is I feel like the town would have its own kind of superstition related to the field. Like we're only told about the field from the perspective of the baseball players that like, oh yeah, it's this field next to what's his name's farm, that's where they're building the stadium. But like the townsfolk have seen people get straight up tremors in the middle of the field and just sucked into the ground. And maybe playing into that will-o'-the-wisp thing that it makes me want to deliver something more like that Texas Chainsaw Massacre harbinger figure that they have some kind of a creepy name for it. And it's, oh, you don't go around there at dark. Everyone becomes Texan when I talk about rural people in games. Can't imagine why.
Yeah, we don't have that drawl, but that would have been pretty cool, I think. They got the ghosts, but it's always good to add a creepy guy in small towns and games.
Oh, that's clearly got to be Farmer Bryant that he watches all them kids go in that field, get swallowed up by the ground, came up here in the dust bowl.
Yeah, shit.
Okay.
Y'all should change that when you run it.
I mean that's what this pod's all about.
I know, I love it. You guys are just like, oh yeah, you should have this idea. I'm like, yeah, man, I wish I'd known about that. That's way better than mine.
It's okay. It's okay. Just to have us do a podcast episode before you release, right?
That's what
While
we'll
you're
do
writing.
next time. Yeah. Like, all right, guys, what do y'all think? How can Little writer's room, spice this up.
Right. To go back to Holly's idea of more like weird science, mythos tech, I would definitely add more mythos tech. Um,
I like the idea with the arena that, they have Edith and they kind of present this challenge. Like I was saying earlier, they think they're so superior to humans and they're here to prove it. And so the investigators have to go through a gamut of challenges. Like it could be baseball. It could like bring in some fucking dinosaurs, man. I don't know. I love pulp. I love acting like making it real weird, bombastic, huge, larger than life. And then when the investigators win, inevitably they could just get pissed off and then they start, like, we're gonna kill you now. And then that just kicks off the chase
And that's when
scene.
they
Oh,
Dallas
yeah.
Cowboys riot in the streets to push them out of the city.
what if they challenged the Kunyan challenged the baseball team to their sport and it's just like hockey.
Missing a lot of good football jokes. That's the Kenyani football is European football. Oh God.
I definitely would go all in on the mythos like mad science. So I would love to see in the chase like maybe like an excavator death machine vehicle that like fires missiles at the investigators. That'd be wild. And maybe like have vehicles that the investigators could get in themselves and have like a vehicle chase because we don't see a lot of vehicle chases in scenarios because that's such a like niche situation. Like the players would
Right.
have to think
I
of
feel like
getting in
people
the
are so
vehicle.
scared to do regular chase scenarios.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, fuck,
Vehicle
I got to do a
chases?
car too? God.
That's next level. Yeah.
Holly, you actually reminded me of one other kind of environmental detail that I'd want to highlight is the players are described as going down this very, very long tunnel through these different layers of rock and earth, and maybe for a couple of miles. I really love the image of that they have dinosaur fossils or like in the walls surrounding them, but as they get deeper and deeper, they just don't look quite right. And then that's whenever they get into the carvings and things like that. I feel like you can at least deliver some more of that creepy buildup before they get into this unnatural dome under the earth. And I know that you are often one to make handouts for your games, Holly. So, in honor of that,
Huh.
we've started adding new sections to this with opportunities where you would want to make handouts for scenarios. Do you have any ideas for this one in particular?
100%. If it were in person, especially, I'd be making those talismans. Like I'd spend the time, get the Sculpey, make them out, paint them up because I love that kind of shit. But not necessarily always something, especially in like an online game. I don't know, I guess you could just like find a picture of something that looks interesting. But yeah, that'd be my thought. The talismans would be cool.
Yeah, these talismans they give the players the ability to seal the city, and they're talismans of I believe Cthulhu and Yig,
Hmm.
which goes with the lore.
And I think they're magnetically drawn to each other too. So knowing you, overachiever, you'd put like magnets within the Sculpey clay that way they pull one out and it gets drawn to the other.
Yes, I would. Yes,
I,
I
on the
would.
other hand, am far too goddamn lazy to do that. My experience like caps out at making the newspaper articles because I really liked the Frankie Cooper or not Frankie Cooper, young, kind of left up in the air. Whatever the story of the guy that comes out without feet and all of his organs are on the wrong side.
Unlucky.
And he has this long ramble about that they've been older than the dinosaurs and made of clouds and gas. And I like the idea that maybe if they bother to go to the Rutland Register, that maybe the reporter that they talked to could show them kind of the canned articles that their boss didn't allow them to publish to get that verbatim information, maybe. I always feel like it's good to read people saying creepy things, maybe than me delivering it. Could just be my shit acting, though.
Yeah. For flavor, I would just like get baseball tickets to hand out to the players. Something to remember the game by.
I love handing out goodies in my in-person games.
That would be fun,
Get some immersion.
especially for something like a con game, too. In y'all's experiences in running or playing in the game, what has really worked at the table, or are there any things that you tried that didn't work out so well, or you may have struggled with?
So as a personal like home table rule, I like to give players luck for one-liners. Because it encourages a certain style of play. It helps set the tone and like people get rewarded for characterization.
Nice.
That's fun.
Yeah.
You just have someone say, it's just been revoked. All right, 10 points.
Or, looks like you're out.
Ooh. They should have to lose luck, though, if it's a really bad one, which is just how you're going to punish me for everything I say.
Oh, no, but on a serious note, I don't actually like to punish players.
The scenario does that for you.
That's true.
What about you, Al? What's worked? What hasn't worked in your experience running it?
Honestly, once people that complain about chase rules kind of get in there and you explain, make this rule, this is how it works, you do these things, I'm gonna lead you through it like little baby player, like this is your first time playing 5e, and I'm ask you for all your little stuff. They all enjoy it. They all enjoy it. That's my greatest success is that I feel like I've made several converts in running the chase here. I'm also very happy with there's a lot of different solutions. I've seen a lot of different ways that people have taken care of the arena sequence, and people, reckless. We have a big firefight, and some people are like super smart about it, and I love that. I love having different approaches, and people take different approaches on the chase too, and they try different things and do things that are really, really smart. And so I love that. I love that. I haven't made one way to do it. I mean, there is one way to do it if the players aren't.
If they're not playing ball.
Yeah,
Hey.
exactly. They'll still get along. I'll be like, all right, just roll jump or whatever. But if they're really creative, then they can do some really cool stuff, and I've always loved that about those sequences.
Do you have any war stories from those times?
Right. So the smartest players, Alex saying it to him, will go use the anti-material guns to make parts of that they don't want to destroy immaterial, right? So they'll go down to rescue Edith, make her immaterial, then throw dynamite at all the Kunyan, because then they're like, oh, well, she's fine. Um, or they'll use the anti-material guns to get past some of the obstacles, because then they can help out their other players. So they'll be like, oh, I'm going to take that little tiny little thing, I'm going to make it immaterial. Now we can all get through. Now we'll change it on the way back. Right. So those are all the stuff that I love seeing, and that, you didn't quite anticipate, but people come up with those ideas. And yes, Alex did do that. He's very smart, very clever.
Uh-huh.
What about you, Alex? Any other stories aside from the guy with 30 arms, fields of arms?
Oh, I have my horror story. Can I tell my horror story?
Yes,
you can tell a
please
horror story.
do.
I should have put this here, but under no circumstance, and I'm so glad that Colin Richards did not do this because I adore him, but under no circumstances should white players decide to do Japanese accents for boots. Under no circumstances should you do that. Do not do that. But I have had a player do that, and it was very uncomfortable.
Oh boy. How do you handle that?
I said, oh, I think that maybe we don't have to use accents, right? Without me having to be so like aggressively like, dude, that's really racist.
Mhm.
But he did get the hint from that, and so I was like, oh, thank God.
All right.
Well, at least there's that. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Otherwise, I think it was online, so I think I might have just kicked him quietly and told the other players, yeah, I didn't want to talk to him.
Oh God, he fell in a different hole, and we're moving on.
These horror stories, they make me very thankful for the players I surround myself with.
That's true.
Uh, yeah, I say I would have some advice running this. Like I said, I like to make the Kunyan a little weirder. Let the players get away with crazy shit. It's a pulp game, and like you want to set up an environment that fosters creativity for your players because they want to feel clever for a crazy solution that they come up with.
And or be extra violent.
I like being very violent.
Embrace that violence.
Become ungovernable.
Yeah, like rubbing urinal cake towels on a burn victim's face and mask.
Hey, we don't... he deserved it.
Well, do y'all have any ideas on how to potentially expand the scenario? I have kind of one.
Sure do.
Go for it.
Yeah. So, like, if you really want to expand the scenario, if you like that cast of baseball players, you could definitely make more baseball themed scenarios where each time they travel to a new locale or play against a new team, it's a new mystery. It's a new scenario. And I can easily see if Edith is rescued from the Kunyans, she could become the head of an investigator organization with the baseball team as a cover. So it's like, oh, well, we got to stop these mythos threats. But here's also our next game that you got to take care of.
That is very much giving me Scooby-Doo meets the Harlem Globetrotters vibes.
Yes.
They're just going to tour and see new places every time.
So yeah, I did basically that. I ran this, from like my home group, and that's basically what we did. Is that they did a little tour of the Midwest, eventually ending up into New York, New England area, and they basically just had baseball themed adventures. I mean, this is a fascinating time for baseball, and so there's lots of stuff for inspiration that you can find. In terms of what everything was like. Kansas City is a great place to have, adventures and everything. This is right after the Great Migration, so Kansas City is becoming one of the nation's new like black cities, right? Like Detroit, where a lot of black people are all moving, and so that's actually where the Negro League Hall of Fame is. And so there's a lot of cool stories to mine there for inspiration. St. Louis is another good place, Chicago, and then you gotta go off, and then eventually in New York at the time, that city's at war over baseball. The New York Giants are still just a baseball team, and they are constantly trading off World Series wins with the Yankees. up in 27, and you can make this part of masks too if you've got an extended like New York thing, and it's kind of odd that it's not ever mentioned in any of the masks books or the expansion because like it's the Murderers Row Yankees, like well the best baseball team of all time. It's got people that you need to know or people you've probably heard of: Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, right? Those are the people that kind of lead this Murderers Row baseball team, and people love going to it. And it's a very multi-ethnic sort of thing, and it takes place just north of Harlem, was where the Polo Grounds are, where the New York Giants are playing, and then across the street in the Harlem River is where the Yankee Stadium is. And so there's a lot of opportunity for stories to be mined there, especially if you're doing like an extended New York Masks chapter. Sorry, I ran this campaign for a while. So.
No, this is all super cool. As someone with zero sports like context or exposure, this is all fascinating. There's all this unique history and stuff going on in there.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to look at it as sort of like the culture of the time. I feel like it's so ignored in everyone's masks material and everything. But there's a great documentary that Ken Burns made called Just Baseball, and they have it. He has a whole episode in the 1920s, and it is amazing historical context for we could do a story like this, and then there's Amigo, and then there's a Ghoul, right? That's basically what happened to me is I just knew all this stuff and I loved baseball, so I wanted to add in stuff like that. And it was a huge part of the culture at the time. So I know that it's not as popular if you're, a nerd like most RPG players, or if you live in, the UK, Australia, and so it's not part of your cultural heritage, but I find it very fascinating.
Or Texas, where I think baseball is outlawed in favor of just football all the time.
I'm not sure that's true.
Boy, it's hard to follow that. I had just one kind of pissant idea compared to all of this. I honestly just want to keep hearing about the baseball masks campaign. But to nest this within a different Chaosium campaign it didn't occur to me until this recent reread, but I feel like you could tuck this in A Time to Harvest, where after the antics from the first act, the students may be kind of required to be part of the Miskatonic University, I don't know, octopi. And maybe the dean is making them go tour as fundraisers for the school. And that's what gets them led here.
That would be good. I don't want to spoil Time to Harvest for people, but there's a couple hard resets in that players don't like.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone that's read it knows what those hard resets are that players don't like, and that's a good way, I think, to avoiding what the players very, very much dislike. Is this like, oh, well, you have no thing. All right, go.
There
Here's
you
a
go.
distraction for
You
a
got
while.
a baseball game now.
That's been, before I run it, that's been my goal, is to try and lace other scenarios in with it, like overdue or something, to stretch it out so it feels more continuous and not 1 year later.
Yeah, and then I mean you'll see the parts what I'm talking about, Lex. And I'm sure you've already identified them. But it's just like, how are you going to get a table full of players to do that?
Mm-hmm.
You got to do something else.
There we go. We solved it.
The this isn't really an expansion on the baseball idea, but it did kind of inspire me with this kind of performative sports team aspect and pulp combination, where I could imagine doing something like that with like the Harlem Globetrotters, with wrestling, where you have a pulp meshed with a performance-based sport.
Oh
You know?
man, professional wrestling is really interesting at this time too. That's kind of what my next, I've always wanted to do a professional wrestling scenario, but it's at a weird time, like in the 1908, wrestling is the most popular sport in the nation, right? And by now, that we're starting to get a secret agreements that we're always going to fix it, that will always be fixed. So it's just becoming fake around this time. So that's also really interesting stuff.
Oh, I remember I did write a wrestling pulp scenario.
I remember that. It was great. It was great fun.
Oh boy.
I did my Macho Man voice for it.
I loved it.
Can we get a teaser?
Oh yeah, you can get a teaser, Lex. So
All right. Well, we got you here, Al. I think that there are a few questions folks just wanted to field your way. Alex, do you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Absolutely. So
Wait, that's not baseball.
so Al, what got you into role-playing games? I want to know more.
I like heard about them, right? And I was like just like a kid. I was like 12 years old.
Wow.
And then one guy ran like D&D second edition for me, and I was like, oh, that's fun. And then he moved away, and
Oof.
he's like a little bit older, and so I never got to play it. And then I was like, well, I still want to play him, so I'll just be the DM. I'll just do that. And I knew about D&D, and I knew the second most popular role-playing game was Call of Cthulhu, and so I got both. And I started running both, and that was where I kind of just got from there. That was like 25 years ago. It's
Oh my
forever
God.
ago. Yeah, I know.
He's old.
I'm old.
And were you always into writing these scenarios or adventures?
I only recently really got into like actually doing it. I always thought, I've always kind of been homebrewing my own stuff and making my own stuff and making my own dungeons. It's only recently that I was like, oh, I could do that. And it was basically because I met a couple of people that had done it and that were really inspiring to me. One was Bridget Jeffries and one was Heinrich Moore.
Mhm.
And they were like, oh yeah, we like normal people and we do this stuff. I'm like, oh, well, I should do it too. That sounds really fun.
In terms of writing those scenarios, do you have a particular design philosophy that you try to kind of follow or work with as you're writing?
I think the most important thing that I think when I do it is I only want to write or play games, run games that I would want to play,
Hmm.
right? And so
That's good.
challenging that. I think earlier you said that one of the limitations of this is very straightforward, and I would kind of agree. And it was kind of my first thing that I wrote, and it was hard to explain to someone else. Well, I know how to run a game, and I'm going to show you how to run a game too. And it's hard to tell them how improv-y and how unbeset by any notes I am when I run a game. And it's a little bit easier to tell them, well, just kind of make it a little straightforward. Just then this happens, right? And that's a little bit easier.
Freedom can be frightening.
And so I guess what I'm trying to help people understand and have the confidence to run games, which is something that I feel like I know how to do, and that the writing is just an outcrop of that, of just telling people, hey, I think this would be cool. You can do this too.
And when you're writing these scenarios, what's it like to play test? What's the experience like? And how often do you play test before you find that you're satisfied with the final product?
So I tend to write based on the play test, right? So I run a
Right.
game and I kind of fill in. I have a couple of ideas as I'm running the game, and I'm playing off of my players a lot, and I'm seeing what they find interesting, and I'm seeing, what they want to do, what they expect, what would, blow their minds or whatever. And so I kind of run that a couple of times to try and see all the different types of players that might be out there and all the different things I should add in. That's how stuff like the mayor comes in, because all of a sudden some group will be like, ah, I know there's got to be some
Yeah.
some
Fuck
evil.
that guy.
Like, yeah, all right, yeah, fine, whatever, man. There's an evil mayor. Go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll give a shit. If you want an evil mayor, you get an evil mayor. And so it's kind of that process of seeing what everyone wants and seeing how much I can synthesize that into a writing process. Like I said, there's some stuff out there like I want more baseball that I can't really deliver. I mean, if you want the extended baseball mechanics, you're free to look at dead ball and add them to this, but I'm not going to write them all down for you. But it's really kind of seeing all the different stuff players will want so that then keepers will have the tools to deliver that to their players.
Right. I understand. We talked at Chaosium Con before, and I asked about like your experience with like just running a scenario and having that come into being, and it's just like you basically said you have the idea and you just run it, and then it's like it's a lot of gut feel, huh?
Yeah, it's sort of knowing. I'm just used to improving scenarios a lot, and kind of going off of that, and reading the table and reading what they need or thinking about what they need, and giving them regions that they can then feel active and I can play off of them. That's really kind of where it all comes from. Is I spend the most time prepping a new game on the pre-gens so that the players will then come up with their own ideas and their own stuff, and then I will kind of play off of them. And usually the most thing to do is the most obvious thing, and then for some reason people think that you're brilliant for it. But
Something that you just mentioned with pre-gens is an issue that I've struggled with in some scenarios that I've tried to write or run. Um, And having players that want to invest or add something to their pre-gens that can give you a little more to work with and build on. Have you found any good tips or shortcuts that you can give, whether it be kind of some evocative character hooks or traits? Finding something that can help them sink their teeth in real quickly in a convention setting.
I think more than even traits or like something like that is it has to be motivations that are easy to understand and that are very strong, right? And the more that like, okay, this I know what this person wants. I think players identify with like desires, and then that gives them a guidebook to how to play the character and how to make the game, interesting. Once they're told, it's like, yeah, this specific person's important to you, you got to save them, right? Then that really helps out a lot. Is it a little bit of a cheat? Yeah, but it's a convention game. We need a little bit of cheats over there, then and there every once in a while.
And speaking of conventions, I hear that there may be one coming up fairly soon. Just wanted to ask if there's any good ways to connect with the community that you might recommend.
Oh yeah, so there's the Miskatonic Repository Convention. It's going to be coming up really soon. Keeper signups are already open if anyone wants to have a game. If you already have it out, we are working on organizing a bundle. And then that bundle usually sells very well. And so it really helps people out with sales and things like that. And then player signups are going to open up on, well, I'm not sure when you'll air this, but for right now, it's going to be on September 13th. And then on the weekend of October 4th through 6th is going to be the con. And it would be really wonderful to have everyone out there running games, planning games, sort of celebrating, the community content that we're creating. And, I think the Miskatonic Repository has done a good job of making a community where people feel supported and that other creators want to help them create and show, hey, this is something you can try at home. I've always said, try this at home, which Bridget has always said is dumb, is not a good slogan. She should change the slogan, but Bridget's not here to tell me I'm dumb, so
Next
try
time.
this at home. Yeah. Next time, she'll be happy to do that. She'll be happy to tell me I'm dumb whenever, wherever.
Well, Al, thanks for making time for this meeting. Oh, God, I've been working too much. Thanks for making time for coming to this recording session. It's been really great having you on.
Oh, it's been really great being here and seeing you all again. I can't wait until we're all at a con together. And hopefully we can be playing games rather than just talking about them.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Well, with that, we hope our deranged utterings are helpful in bringing this game to life at your table. You can join the autopsy discussion on Discord and subscribe or follow the podcast to hear more gruesome cases. Be sure to check out the show notes for links where you can find the scenario, where to find us, and other resources for things like handouts, actual plays of the scenarios that we recommend, and other GM resources. We also upload all of these to our Discord server. So until next time, thanks for listening to RPG Reanimators.
Where your games can die.
On
Or
the
live.
table. Sorry. No, shit. Shit.
Keeping it.
Fuck. Edit this out. They're never gonna invite me back. On the table.
Almost forgot.
All right, you're out.
The world that the Kenyans inhabit. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Inhabit. And sorry, it's been a long day.
3 strikes, you're out. No, okay.
Boo.
All right.